The International Trophy for Classic GT cars, the pre-66 era, the final race of the 2024 Silverstone Festival. And once more, that combination, Nigel Greensell and John Spears, will start at the front in the TVR Griffith. Julian Thomas in another big muscle car, the Daytona Cobra, ahead of the TVR of John Davison and Olivier Hart rather, in the Daytona Cobra. Harry Barton's TVR means there's lots of big capacity V8s at the front. Mike Whitaker has one of those as well, and he's in amongst a sea of Jaguar E-types. Miles Griffiths with the Shelby Cobra behind the Balfour Ashton Lotus Elan. That's a typo rather than its actual name. And Lotus Elan's Jaguar E-types and the Daytona Cobras will be battling for supremacy here. So lots to look forward to, plenty to conjure with. It looks as though Jan Magnussen will get a race here as well, with Vasily Mortensen in their Cobra, Daytona Cobra. Some less frequently seen cars. There's a couple of Ginetta G4Rs in the race. Not sure I've ever seen a Ginetta G4R race before, so we've got double enjoyment of that. And it is a very big grid indeed. So 53 cars heading out into the dusk. Lights are on in the commentary booth, otherwise we can't see our hands in front of our face, but you can see that some of the cars here have got their lights on. It does a little bit look, Alistair Douglas, like it's a spring starter meeting rather than the middle of the glorious hottest month of the year here in the UK summer. But it is the UK summer, I suppose, so we come to expect that a bit.
Yes, it's quite nice to see the lights in the dusk, but I think I'd rather see a nice sunny, warm evening, being August in the UK. But there we go. But a great range of cars, a lot of E-types in this one, but also Shelby Daytona Cobra coupes, which we can see at the front there. A car which was designed to try and be a bit more, well, it was more aerodynamic than the traditional Cobra shape, to try and challenge the Ferraris, but Ferrari at the same time came out with the 250 GTO, which was much quicker, although the Daytona Cobra did have success.
And it wasn't long before the GTO was superseded by the 250 LM as well in the mid-60s, and in GT racing, the mid-engine revolution, or Le Mans, the mid-engine revolution arrived as well. But on the front end of the grid, it is all about cubic capacity. The first two rows boasting, I don't know what, 28 litres of power. So the TVRs, the first, third and fifth car on the driver's right of the grid, are all big V8s. So too the Daytona Cobras. But it is the pale yellow car, number 8, with the grey roof, Dan Eagling's Ginetta G4R, that is the David amongst the Goliaths, isn't it? And again, as we saw with the Lotus Elans against the big horsepower cars, so with the Ginetta, they are light, they don't have the punching power, but boy, they can duck and weave. So look for that little pale yellow, primrose yellow car with the grey roof, the Ginetta G4R. It's barely going to be audible amongst all the big horsepower V8s and then the Jaguar E-types behind it, but that car could well spring a surprise. It's not all about capacity. The final race of the 2024 Silverstone Festival gets underway. It's the International Trophy for Classic GT cars, and the thundering V8 horsepower from the front row and second row and third row of the grid, swamping the small capacity yellow Ginetta G4. It is John Spears and Julian Thomas on the front row of the grid. Julian in the big Daytona Coupe with a big white V on the nose, drops down to 4th at the start. The second Cobra Coupe, Olivier Hart, the green car, the olive car, up to 2nd place, but it is our pole man. And is that Nigel Greensell or John Spears? I think that's Nigel Greensell who has started. And he is in front of Olivier Hart, and they are looking to try and clear off head of the TVR of John Davison.
And a huge mass of cars. What a sight as they come down towards Brooklands. And the little yellow Ginetta of Dan Eagling has retained a very high position despite them having gone down that long straight. He's managed to hold on there. He's in third behind Julian Thomas, and sorry, fifth behind Julian Thomas, my apologies, as they come out of Luffield. And this is where I think some of the quicker TVRs and maybe a Daytona Cobra will go past him.
Well, he's just got ahead of Julian Thomas, so is car number 18, the TVR Griffith of Harry Barton, who also powers his way by Dan Eagling. Now, don't forget, Dan Eagling's got lots of experience in underpowered cars against much more powerful equipment. He does that in his 2-litre sports racer against all the big banger sports cars. But here again, outgunned. There goes Julian Thomas past him, and now going into the Beckett's S's. Thomas's car is all over the road, and Dan Eagling can literally drive around the outside of him. There he goes. Light, nimble, probably weighs about a third of what the Daytona Coupe weighs. He's probably got about a third of the horsepower, but in the Beckett's S's, he slays the Giant. And then, of course, the Giant gets back up and runs right by him in the straight. 2 TVR Griffiths in front, 88 John Davison, 18 Harry Barton. It's going to be a long race for Dan Eagling, but out front, Nigel Greensall and Olivier Hart. TVR Griffith versus Daytona Cobra. They are the front runners, and they are already leaving a big gap to this battle for third place between another pair of TVR Griffiths.
They come through Club Corner and completing the end of the first lap. Thanks to Harry Barton for running those little green running lights, which were very, very common and still are, of course, in long-distance racing, so that the pit crew know which car it is that's coming in. Not so much these days with radios and so on, but certainly in this period they had no idea which car was coming in. So a pair of green lights for Harry Barton, and he's chasing the number 88 John Davison similar car, the TVR Griffith. That's the British TVR with the 4.7-litre Ford V8 engine, the same as in the front of the Daytona Cobras, essentially. And down the Wellington Straight they go. What a great battle it is between Barton and Davison. One side, then the other. Barton going wide, Davison covering the inside line into Brooklands. This might give Harry Barton a chance. He can take a faster line coming up behind John Davison. He's trying the long outside line through Luffield. This can work if he can cut back now to the inside for the exit of Luffield, and that's exactly what he's trying to do, and get the inside for Woodcote. And he's got the overlap, so he's now, if he can hold him, he's got the inside for Copse Corner, and that could be a change of place with the very well driven Harry Barton car going up into third place. Once again, that move took about 4 or 5 corners, didn't it?
Yeah, fantastic stuff from Harry Barton up to third place. Julian Thomas still with the little yellow Ginetta G4 of Dan Eagling right under his rear wing. And actually, when they get into the twisty stuff, Julian Thomas can't probably see him because the car is so small. These cars, despite their little battle, not actually losing too much ground to the race leaders. Nigel Greensall 1.7 seconds ahead of Olivier Hart. There they are, first and second. Hart in that olive green Daytona Coupe. Looks like it might be losing a little bit more this lap, but these guys are about another 2 seconds back. And if actually they can settle down, with Harry Barton just ahead of 88 Jim Davison, and if Julian Thomas can go with them, these 3 cars working together in a little queue, A, will shake off Dan Eagling, and B, will run down the leaders.
Harry Barton has opened a little gap as we've got the 33 Lawley Elan just trying to fire the engine up. Just a little bit of unburnt fuel coming out the back.
Not
there.
the only one either. There's another Elan. That's the Nick Pink Chris Fox car. That's a Lotus Elan 26R. So they all pretty much are 26Rs, even if they didn't start out that way. 26R is the racing version of the Lotus 26, otherwise known as the Lotus Elan.
Lawley managed to get going again, but it doesn't look like the Nick Pink Fox car is going to continue pulling off to the side.
More smoke, and none of it's coming out of the exhaust, so that's not a great look, I'm afraid.
Nick stopping, trying to get the car to a place where it won't cause a break in the race. If he can get it to a marshal's post where they can pull him behind the barriers, that's very good of him.
Yeah, it does look a bit like he's got a bit of a misfire. It keeps coming and going, doesn't it? It's trying to clear itself and not really succeeding. Meanwhile, here's our race leader, car number 14, the dark blue TVR Griffith with the silver stripes straight down the body. Nigel Greensell leads the race. Olivier Hart in the olive green Daytona Coupe in second place, car number 41. And yellow flags are out to cover one of our two Lotuses in strife.
That was coming into the Beckett's complex, that yellow flag. I wonder if that Lotus didn't quite manage to get off the track.
Yeah, may not have just yet. Looks like they're green from here on in, though, out of the Chapel Curve onto Hanger Straight. And there is the Lotus. Well, he's managed to get it sorted behind the wall. The marshals will pull him back even further behind the wall. There is a little gap. And there is a recovery truck rating to take him away. Well, disappointing that after all the anticipation of this weekend and surviving all the way through the day to the very final race, you only get about 5 minutes into it. That's really disappointing, I'm afraid. That's also motor racing. Julian Thomas, third place in the dark blue. These are Julian's colours, aren't they? The dark blue with the white V. Has those on pretty much every car he races.
And he's ahead of John Davison. Dan Eagling not being dropped, so he's still in the mix. And
well, the other thing about that Ginetta is that not only is he not really being dropped by these big capacity American V8s, but he's way ahead of any of the E-types. Way ahead of the E-types. It's 5.5 seconds ahead of the Pearson and Brundle E-type, car number 23, which is the lead E-type. So, you know, in terms of bang for your buck, a Ginetta G4R is really doing the job, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And he's now not only not being dropped, he's actually starting to nibble away at the back of the Davison TVR Griffith. He was much closer that time. Well, Nigel Greensell, as so often he does here at the Silverstone Festival, sharing with John Spears. They've shared a lot of cars this weekend. Again,
is that
Nigel,
a little bit of smoke there?
Yep, does look like a little bit of smoke. I know it's a British car of the 60s and they are sort of an unintentional total loss oil system, most cars. But you don't want it to start smoking that early. Harry Barton, fastest race lap in his TVR. So he's got his head down and charging. Remember, I was saying that if he and Julian Thomas worked together with John Davison, they could all catch the leaders. Well, he's done his part in that, getting the fastest car to the front of the queue, but they've not been able to stay with him and use that slipstream. So he is on his own. Harry Barton, fastest race lap, 2 minutes 22.3. 2:22, I beg your pardon, 0.23. 2:22.24 is the quickest lap for Olivier Hart. 2:22.66 on this lap is the fastest lap that Nigel Greensell has produced in the leading car. So the leader is slower than the car in second, which is slower than the car in third. Harry Barton is pushing up towards the battle for the lead.
Working hard there at the wheel, Harry Barton. There's the two leaders. There's third place, Harry Barton, closing in those distinctive green lights. There's Julian Thomas with the distinctive white arrow on the nose as he comes up to the right-hander at Abbey, and then just behind them is the John Davison and Dan Eagling battle. Which altogether is only what 12 seconds
off the lead.
leader.
Yes, absolutely. So pit stops could have a big part to play. And in fact, Dan Eagling in his Ginetta G4R is 8 seconds ahead of the Pearson and Brundle E-Type, which is just 1.5 seconds ahead of the number 46 Whittaker-driven E-Type, and another, what is it with 26Rs? They're all falling by the wayside. One breaks down, and they all seem to take it as an opportunity to have a bit of a quick trip into the nether regions. Peter Reynolds and Daniel Quintero's 26R at the side of the road, described as yellow and silver in the notes. That seemed more to be yellow and black, but that was the car anyway. There's Julian Thomas through in 4th place. John Davison still just ahead of Dan Eagling, and still just as well, not making much of an escape from the Ginetta. It'll be interesting to see. In fact, I said Mike Whitaker was in an E-Type. He's not. He's in a TVR Griffith, but the Pearson and Brundle car is our lead E-Type. And then the Dodds, who were the top E-Type on the grid, they are currently the 2nd E-Type in 10th. And then the Newell and Sota car, and that's come up very well from 18th on the grid. Now going in the opposite direction. In fact, did it start kind of a 1.72, the Mortensen and Magnussen Daytona Coupe? Yes, it did, but it's gone from 15th on the grid down to 23rd. And did Dan Eagling have a little problem on that lap? Because he has been dropped by the TVR. Here's the next group. And there is the lead Jaguar. So that is the Pearson Brundle car. Here's Mike Whitaker in the pale blue TVR Griffith.
A spin there for one of our big Heelys, the number 119, John Caldwell, driving solo. And that's the engine's running, so he should be able to spin that round as soon as the traffic's gone by.
Yeah, you saw the other Ginetta G4R in the race just going around the nose of his car, this sort of bright blue car. But 23 is the Brundle and Pearson car.
Started by Gary Pearson.
Yep.
And Mike Whitaker coming up alongside, but Gary Pearson takes the line through Beckett's and holds the position, but right behind Mike Whitaker is the Pearson and Pearson. You might say, well, how can there be more Pearsons than two? Well, that's because Gary Pearson is sharing both cars. Yeah. Typical Gary, he's going to jump out of one, jump into the other.
Yeah, John Pearson is driving 53 at the moment. Gary will take over because Gary Pearson is driving 23, where Alex Brundle will take over.
So John Pearson can see his brother up ahead, and they'll have to do a bit of
well, if they stay that close when they come into the pits, that will work perfectly. What you don't want is to be more than a minute behind, because then somebody has to wait for somebody else to arrive. And nobody likes that, whether you're in a pit lane or the pub, to be honest.
Oh, and that's very, very unusual. Gary Pearson made a mistake and went wide onto the gravel. That shows how hard he's trying. Very, very rare that you see Gary go offline like that, and that puts Mike Whitaker up a place, so he's now up to 7th.
Gary loses 2 because through goes his other car. Oh, that's my car. He's now going to have to follow his own car because it's John Pearson who's gone by Gary Pearson in the car that Gary will take over. So again, they are now even closer, although Gary Pearson's lost 2 spots to make that happen, or to accidentally make that happen. In fact, he might be in danger of losing another one as well now, because Gary Pearson in the number 23 Jaguar E-Type is coming under pressure once more, and that's from 21, the car with the yellow noseband, and that's the Dodd's car. Who started that? Gary Dodd? Graham Dodd, rather, and James Dodd will take over.
Looks like Graham as well in the driving that car, so he's father Graham, son James.
All over the back of Gary Pearson right now, and I think he senses that maybe Gary's just got a little bit of a problem with the car. I think Gary Pearson, though, has stabilised the ship a little bit. Number 23 E-Type looks like it's holding on to its spot, but Mike Whitaker in the pale blue TVR got away. He's in 7th, and then the E-Type's 8th, 9th and 10th, and 11th place is the Cobra of Miles Griffiths.
The pit window has just opened.
Ooh.
It'll be open for 15 minutes, and once again everybody has to come in obviously and do their stop. There are various additional stop times for the elite and elite plus drivers.
Naturally.
So yeah, so we will see some of the cars that we're seeing up near the front losing time. One of those, perhaps the most important, is Nigel Greensall and John Spears. They will have to serve an additional time in the pits.
Not Olivier Hart?
Yes, they will as well.
I was going to say, who's not been watching racing recently to think that Olivier Hart's not in the elite category? Because he properly is. Oh dear, there's that Lotus again. This car is not having a good time. Peter Reynolds, Daniel Quintero, we saw it stopped, and it's sort of trying to drive its way to a place of safety. It's not really making much progress. Harry Barton in third place. How close has he got now? He's only 1.5 seconds behind Olivier Hart. There's the Daytona Coupe. Nigel Greensall closer to the camera. Olivier Hart flashing the headlights because he can see, well, that's definitely on full beam, isn't it? The headlights of Harry Barton's TVR coming up behind. He doesn't care about annoying oncoming traffic. What he's trying to do is annoy the car in front of him and distract Olivier Hart as much as possible.
And in fact, in the penalty stakes, in the pit stops, Olivier Hart will have the longest penalty because he's driving solo, and therefore, as an elite driver, he gets the additional few seconds. So we will see the order shake around. But we saw that in the race a couple of races ago, where it actually brought everybody back into contention again, which is the idea of it.
We've got a few father and son and family combinations. We've got the Pearson brothers. We've just got, you were saying, the Dodds. And, of course, family relations in car number 24 as well. The number 24 E-Type, Adrian Newey, sharing with his son Harrison Newey. They are currently in 18th place, ahead of another all-family E-Type, car number 111, Simon and Dominic Jackson. So all sorts of family racing going on here to round out the weekend. Harry Barton ahead of Julian Thomas, trying to put a Ginetta and an Elan between them. I think he succeeds in maybe getting the Ginetta in front of Julian Thomas. He does, or getting by the Ginetta, and Julian Thomas does. And Julian jumped the Elan in the braking zone. Well, I'm not sure the Elan was on the brakes by the time Julian was. In the pit lane, the number 21, that is Graham and James Dodds E-Type. Driver change going on, just double clicking with the torque wrench on those wheel nuts to make sure there's no dramas. But the lead three stay out. Julian Thomas, first of our front runners to stop. There's Graham and James Dodds E-Type. Who else is in? Car number 34, and that is Sean Balfe and Tom Ashton's Lotus Elan. Not the only Elan in as well. This is 79 Mark Drain driving on his own. Must be pretty hot work in a closed car of any capacity.
Harry Barton decides to carry on, as does Olivier Hart. They're both solo, so they can just choose whenever they want to come in. And
well, given that he's going to be handing John Spears a sizable pit lane penalty, you would think that the plan would be for Nigel Greensall to continue lapping as quick as possible for as long as possible. It's not going to build up exactly the hugest advantage over Olivier Hart, but of course Hart will drop down the order as well. And the 88 TVR of John Davison is in. So this is 5:51, Graham and Jen Ridgway's Lotus 26R.
That's another family, that's father and daughter.
And the only Porsche in the race appears no longer to be in the race, since there's nobody in either the left-hand or the right-hand seat of that red car. That would seem to be, and in fact the lime green Lotus Elan, there is somebody in it, I think so. Seems to be a lot of not very concerned chatter going around that lime green Elan. 89 car of Matthew Wrigley. There you go, 60 seconds done. Yeah, there's work going on in that. It's not an Elan day, is it? really is not. 281, Richard Baxter's 26R in the gravel. I thought the idea of an Elan was that they handled well, not that they were attracted to gravel traps, and he's dug himself in, I'm afraid. That may not be good news. Now, it might be good news for anybody who has not yet made a pit stop. Because if they can make a pit stop while the safety car is out and everybody else is toodling around slowly, then it will cost them less time, and that might undo some of their time penalty that they will serve for being quicker drivers. .172, this is Nikolai Mortensen and Jan Magnussen's Shelby Daytona Coupe. So this all-Danish pairing is sharing two cars, a Daytona Coupe and the Turner. So, very slightly different devices.
There's Jan Magnussen in that now.
Yeah, and by very slightly, obviously I mean diametrically on opposite ends of the power, weight and everything else scale, pretty much. Certainly cost.
Well, being in Elan, those four marshals, they should just be able to pick it up and walk it away. It's weighs about a pocket.
It hadn't been quite so buried. Well done, marshals. Well done. It's not just about fighting fires and extricating drivers from damaged cars and looking after their health and safety. It's also, oh, you've dropped the clutch. You can't bump start it in gravel. Stop trying to do that. And he's going to give him exactly the same lecture. Just let us push you out. Otherwise, you're on your own. Right, go. Go, go, go. That's it. There you go. If you're planning on going racing, by the way, do what the marshals tell you. Just do what the marshals tell you. He had an engine. They helped him extricate himself, and now he's back on terra firma. Might have caused him a lap, but those volunteers have helped him get out of the gravel trap, a situation into which he put himself. So well done to those guys. More pit stops going on.
It's the very obvious turquoise E-Type. Ria Sorter started that, Andy Newell started that. Ria Sorter, the German lady who prepares a whole range of cars.
She only has access to one paint colour, doesn't she?
She does.
Yes.
Markus von Euenhausen, who she prepares his cars, the German Count, uses that colour.
Well, there is Julian Thomas, and he is right up behind Harry Barton now. So these guys have still not stopped. Julian Thomas with the fastest lap of the race on the last lap. So he certainly found to look at the colour of those brakes. Absolutely glowing red hot as he tries to get the speed off the Daytona Coupe into Stowe. Harry Barton heads for the pit lane. Pull back, pull back, pull back. Has Julian Thomas gone in as well? No, he hasn't. So Harry Barton's gone in and Julius Thomas continues there. Julian Thomas is at the top of the picture. Harry Barton comes in, headlights ablaze.
Did we mention that Thomas has got the fastest lap?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Well, yes, he has. Yes, just on this lap, hasn't he? Yeah. Oh, look at the big blower there to try and cool the TVR and its brakes. Double leaf blowers on one side, a huge garage blower on the other side, and a bit of a clean of the screen. Harry Barton stays in. You don't have to get out and then get back in if you're not changing drivers. You just have to be stationary. So it was a quick check under the car, also just a quick check of tyre pressures. I think he's enjoying himself, don't you?
I was just going to say that, yeah.
He's probably got sweat running down his face now because he's stationary. I do think he's enjoying himself.
He's
carry on for a bit, enjoy yourself, come back in when the checkered flags come out.
Young driver who's really come on in the last couple of years, very accomplished.
Helmet not unlike Jamie Davis, actually. Single seat race. Now then, here's our lead battle. Nigel Greensell less than a second ahead of Olivier Hart. In fact, much less than a second. It was 0.89 of a second at the line. That's about half a second, although Olivier doesn't get the best break in traffic there. Got by Ria Sorter's E-Type, but there's another one between them. There's always an E-Type in the way, isn't there, if you're in a big car?
And,
or a small car, like a Mini.
Is that just looking for the 23 car on our list? That must be Alex Brundle now in that, must it? I presume it's been into the pits. For a moment, I've lost it on our charts.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know, but it's.
Well, it looks like a Brundle helmet, so I'm definitely going with that.
There he is, 30th.
Well, he was taking over from Gary Pearson.
Yeah.
And the other Pearson car, car number 53, appears to have disappeared as well. So they must have gone into the pits at the same time. Leaders are in. Does that mean the pit window is nearly closed?
No, still another 8 minutes to go.
Okay, well, they have both chosen this opportunity to come in. With a little over, or just under 24 minutes of the race remaining.
Sorry, 3.5 minutes to go.
3.5 minutes, okay, yeah. So another lap would have been possible, but possibly not advisable.
Yeah, just a 15.
Julian Thomas
window.
on his way out of the pit lane. No, into the pit lane, right, there you go. So Julian Thomas coming in from 3rd place.
And Mike Whitaker also must come in along with the other Pearson car. They're both in, as I say that, so...
E-Types everywhere you look, they're all leaving. Little red, not quite so little, Volvo 1800 right there on the pit apron. Yeah, in comes Mike Whitaker, out goes a Mustang, out goes a Cobra. And is that the other Pearson E-Type?
Yes, it is.
Okie dokie.
53. So... Gary Pearson, you can see running to the car there with the red stripes on his white race suit. He's just got out of 23. And
busy, isn't it? And unfortunately, the parked Porker, which is still in the service lane, is really getting in the way a bit. I would have thought if you weren't getting any further with that, you might be gentlemanly and get out of the way and push it into a garage. Meanwhile, we've just had the Pure Michigan Mustang celebration race. Celebrating with a few more Mustangs in this one. Julian Thomas coming out ahead of John Spears, so that's the driver penalty. Glenn Eagling right behind in the Ginetta G4. There goes the Volvo. That's the 1800S. Door open on Olivier Hart's car now, that's a sort of window thingy. A little aero tab, very interesting. And trouble for 123, facing in the wrong direction briefly. That is Can Bittrim and David Gardner's Jaguar E-Type.
So we know Julian Thomas in the pit lane was ahead of John Spears, who's taken over from Nigel Greensall.
And he's behind Olivier Hart.
That's what I was about to ask.
So he's closed up a lot on Olivier Hart. And there is Harry Barton, also ahead of John Spears. And Glenn Eagling with the headlights on, the yellow car in the background. So Miles Griffith has not stopped.
And
Miles Griffiths has not stopped in the TVR.
He can come in
the
this
Cobra
lap.
rather, 137.
He's got time to come in. He is leaving it late though.
Yeah, not much, 52 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's time if he's within 52 seconds of the pit lane. There's Adrian Newey, looks like he's had a good enough time. I'm sure he knows the result of the Dutch Grand Prix. Miles Griffiths is in, so we revert to our lead group. So rare opportunity for Adrian to race with his son Harrison. Both have raced in historic cars in various different things. Harrison's raced in modern cars as well, raced at Le Mans in modern cars. But you don't get many opportunities to race as a father and son when you're as busy as Adrian Newey is. Of course, next year he might be doing a bit more because he'll be on gardening leave. So he'll have a bit more opportunity for race weekends away. Entering his final few months as the designer at Oracle Red Bull Racing. But all of that, I'm sure, is about as far from his mind as it can be with Adrian, which is never very far, because he's busy enjoying a race weekend. So Olivier Hart back in the lead from Julian Thomas. These are our top two, both in Daytona Coupes, Daytona Cobra Coupes. And then John Spears looks to be in fourth behind Harry Barton, 2 TVRs, when Dan Eagling will cycle round to fifth. Unless Miles Griffiths has a fairly short pit stop and comes in between them. But these are our lead duo.
The gap between them across the timing line that time was 1.6, and Julian Thomas was 1.5 seconds quicker than Olivier Hart on that lap. So if that is continued, then Julian Thomas will be very much in touch with Olivier Hart. But of course, to be fair to Olivier, he may have caught traffic on that lap, so we don't know.
There's John Spears with the pale blue stripe down. Here's dark TVR. Glenn Eagling looks to be right behind him. Now, is Harry... I was looking at John Spears rather than spotting Harry Barton. He's just whistled in front of the camera, so he is in third, Harry Barton. John Spears fourth, Glenn Eagling here in fifth. And possibly leading the 2-litre category.
I think he might just be. That's
by about 2 laps.
The G4R, as you've mentioned, the racing version of the G4, that's got the Lotus twin cam engine at the front, which, as we know from Lotus Cortina, is a very, very effective engine in a little tiny lightweight body.
How does he get a twin cam in that? I suppose they get one in an Elan, which is equally low.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's not, though. Look at the Elan. I'd say the Ginetta has got a lower bonnet. Maybe it's canted over. Maybe they got some sort of trick inlet for the twin Webers.
Leaders coming down into Stowe Corner. Olivier Hart manages to put a Healy between himself and Julian Thomas looked to be going wide there, but I think it's just his favoured line. He quite likes to go wide into Stowe.
Yep.
So we'll see down into Club Corner. There's Harry Barton in third place.
It's what modern racing driver parlance would call V'ing off the corner. So you go straight for as long as possible and turn in as short a distance as possible. Of course, at the speed you're getting to Stowe, it's a little harder to V it off, but it does mean that he comes out straighter into the Vale. And whichever, 2:22.850 last time round for Olivier Hart, 2:22.906. So half a tenth between them. Olivier Hart was a whisker quicker. That really is very little at all. Again, the yellow gloves of Olivier Hart shows how busy he is behind the wheel. He does like to make a car dance, doesn't he? And for Julian Thomas, again, an owner driver up against this young wunderkind of historic racing. He's doing a stunning job, Julian Thomas. Where's the third place car of Harry Barton? Look for the green lights on the roof. There he is. And that was 7.8 seconds back.
And a spin for, is that the Balfe started Elan, I think, with the red stripes.
Might be.
But a spin there for car number 33. I think I may be wrong.
So that's the Lawley Shanley car.
Yeah,
that's been in strife already, hasn't it? Is that the one that was in the gravel trap, or did it ground to a halt? It's been in trades.
We've seen it before, put it that way.
It's in the headmaster's notebook already. Well, Julian Thomas closing right in on Olivier Hart on this lap. Olivier didn't get the clearest break in traffic. I think the gap has come down a little, and Julian Thomas, nearly 16 minutes to go. He's got the bit between his teeth. Now he doesn't catch the Cobra in quite the right place. Need a bit of a decent gap to get a Cobra Daytona Coupe through.
And you can clearly see in that picture the difference between the Daytona Coupe and the standard Cobra body. And the Shelby company looking to improve the aerodynamics, which I think you could say they did.
Yeah, definitely. Lower frontal area, or smaller frontal area, lower bonnet, lower roofline, long tapering roofline, the cam tail, all of these are real 1960s aerodynamic cues. It definitely made it a quicker, more competitive car. But time was a bit against it. The 250 GTO was perhaps a more complete, more developed car. And then the 250 LM definitely signed the death knell of big front engine roadsters.
And And second in the smaller car, one of the smaller car classes, to the flying Dan Eagling in the Ginetta, is Giles Dawson in the Elan, number 95, in 10th place overall. Giles, the son of Andy Dawson, who, if you recall way back, Andy Dawson, a very successful rally driver, Dawson Auto Developments, which
ran racing teams as well.
Yeah,
had a big workshop here at Silverstone.
The car is prepared by Andy Dawson and Andrew Marriott,
who was one of Andy Dawson's co-drivers.
Indeed.
After co-driving for Roger Clark, went on to co-drive for Andy Dawson. One of the most spectacular cars they shared together, checkered flag Lancia Stratos.
There aren't many people can say they've co-driven or driven a Lancia Stratos.
No, indeed. Or co-driven Roger Clark at his pomp. No, absolutely, with Tony Mason. So, yeah, I'm confused by Tony Mason's and my Andrew Marriott, aren't I? It was Andrew Marriott was definitely with Andy Dawson. I'm now retrenching my Roger Clark comments.
I shall get a nasty message from Andrew Marriott.
I'll get a nasty message from Matt Clark and Ollie Clark. So there we go. But yeah, Dawson up just outside the top 10, knocking on the doors of the top 10. So the Daytona Coupes, of course, really for Carroll Shelby, the car that did the damage to the future of the Daytona Coupe wasn't anything other than the Ford GT40, which is really what, that became America's sports car, and the Daytona Coupe was a brief footnote in history after that.
And it looks closer. It may be that the camera foreshortens the gap between them, but at the line last time it was 1.6. I don't believe that's 1.6,
no,
with camera foreshortening.
Agreed. I think that's barely a second. Now the cars are sliding around all over the place. Julian Thomas with more experience of his own car, and Olivier Hart, this superb young driver. He was absolutely electrifying in the Ferrari 512M. Unexpected pit call for TVR 88 of John Davidson. He's dropped out of any potential reckoning, and this is definitely Julian Thomas trying to seize victory. He was 1.2 seconds quicker than Olivier Hart on that last lap. He is now rejoining battle with the Dutchman. He is right with the youngster.
This is a really impressive drive from Julian Thomas, who's
100%.
a genuine amateur, but very, very ably coached in his historic racing. Absolutely loves it. And he's up against one of the hottest shoes in historic racing, Olivier Hart.
Yep.
And is this the move that changes the lead? No, Olivier manages to cut back across in front of Julian as they turn into Brooklands. But will Julian go for the double shuffle through Luffield?
Watch the aspect of the cars. Watch how much more grip Julian Thomas seems to have on the rear of his car, how much less his car appears to be tail happy. Now, that might just be the way that Olivier Hart is driving it compared to Julian's style, but I do think that Olivier is running out of rear tyres. We heard that from Sam Tordoff, pushing the car a little bit too hard when you've got a long race. This is 50 minutes. These cars generate a thumping amount of torque. These are not big, fat slicks. Julian Thomas looking for the lead into the Beckett's S's, really pitches it in tight, wanted to make sure he didn't run out wide and make contact with Olivier Hart. But Olivier's car is definitely sliding more than the chasing car of Julian Thomas.
The whirling wheel of Olivier Hart's car with those yellow gloves. And here comes Julian Thomas. He's got a better run out of Chapel. And does he go by on the hanger straight? Well, he does, but he can't turn in.
Fight it all the way through. Julian Thomas had the traction coming out of the Chapel curve onto the hanger straight to get the run on Olivier Hart, but ran out of steam. And Olivier just braked desperately late to hold on to the race lead. 10.5 minutes of this to go. And again, you've got to think this is a little bit like the pre-66 Grand Prix race, that the quicker car behind has got more going for it.
Set off another lap through Abbey and Farm. headlights ablaze on Olivier Hart's car. Julian Thomas doesn't need his headlights. A little bit of a lock up there. I think that was a rear brake grabbing on Julian Thomas's car, but look how close he is. He's got the overlap, but he's going to go all the way around the outside, but he'll now try and cut back on the inside, but just no room. Olivier Hart knows exactly where to place that car to make it difficult for Julian Thomas to get by. They're coming down. They'll probably get past this TVR on the straight. Yes, they do. That's not one of the big engined TVRs. So Olivier Hart still leading as they go into Brooklands. More slower traffic in front of them.
Again, nowhere near the apex, right in the middle of the road. This is defensive work from Olivier Hart. And again, I think the way that Julian drives the car, it's a much more four-wheel drift, whereas Olivier does seem to drive the car on the throttle off the corners more sideways. I wonder if that's why Julian's been able to preserve his tyres, or maybe just that the team and the driver are more familiar with the car than Olivier is. But either way, this is going to be an epic end. Speed, is that Mooncraft to land? Speedcraft to landing. Oh, here's the challenge. Julian Thomas up the inside, has to go over the curbs on the inside, but he makes the pass. He leaves the door open for Olivier Hart to come back at him. Whoa. Entertaining stuff. Well, Julian Thomas showing plenty of intent there. Dive to the inside, but left room. And that's what you want to see.
And now he's in the lead. He's gone through this time, but Olivier Hart comes back at him later on the brakes on the inside of Stowe Corner. Doesn't give Julian the option to turn in where he wants to, but now they're moving down through the Vale into the left-hander, so Julian, even if he hadn't got ahead, would have had the inside line. So lead change with about 8 minutes to go.
But Julian Thomas likes that wide open line around Stowe, almost as if he's going around the white line on the exit, so that didn't really hamper him too much. He keeps his nose in front of Olivier Hart, but the danger is not over for Julian Thomas. Olivier Hart is going to be very hard to shake off. It's one thing to attack, but as Olivier just showed, it's another to have to defend, because really the impetus is with the driver behind, because he makes the moves. And again, Julian has to open the steering there as Olivier shows his nose very early into the loop. Out of Aintree, he'll have the wider line, Julian Thomas, but doesn't have quite as much traction out there off track. And Olivier Hart will get his nose back in front, but there is traffic in front of them, and they will catch it in Luffield, and that might hamper Olivier Hart's exit onto the pit straight here.
As they turn into Luffield now, they've got the Reassorta E-Type immediately in front of them, and looks like Olivier Hart's decided to go to the inside through Woodcote Corner. Julian Thomas follows him through. They've got one further car right in front of them, which they won't catch before Copse, or will they?
They will.
Just about.
No, not quite, because of course he'll brake later in the Elan.
So not really compromised either of them, but the Elan's still ahead. Now Olivier Hart has to find a way through before Beckett's, because he really doesn't want to be behind that Elan, but he is going into Beckett's.
Look at the poor Elan driver. What's he going to do? He's got a Daytona Coupe in each mirror. Yes. Well, here for a moment he gets the respite, because he can leave them behind, and Olivier Hart and Julian Thomas can't match the Elan's handling in the Beckett's S's, but they'll blow by him on the straight. Julian not close enough, I don't think, to get a run on Olivier Hart this time, and he can't go wide, so he has to look to the inside, cuts back to the outside. Olivier knows that's going to happen, sits in the middle of the road.
I thought Julian was going to go for the grass option there, but
he thought he was as well, and then thought about it otherwise, I think.
So down once again into the left-hander on the historic Vale. And Olivier Hart takes a big chunk of grass on the inside of the corner, trying to straighten the corner as much as possible. Now they're into Club Corner. They both run across the curbs on the inside and outside, but up to Abbey now into the right-hander. Not really an overtaking place. It's a little bit too quick, but we're coming up to the hard braking for Village.
And Julian Thomas, his door has come open. He just slammed the door shut in the middle of a corner.
He did close up on braking for Village, and this is where Olivier Hart dived up the inside and got past last lap around.
Well, he couldn't make a pass there because there was a Mustang going the wrong way, so there would have been yellow flags out, but now they're back to green, and Olivier Hart runs out wide and loses traction, and here's a chance for Julian Thomas, but Olivier's going to try and squeeze him over to the driver's right, box him in behind the big Healy, and he succeeds and just hangs on there a fraction. But they are absolutely on the limit of adhesion with these cars. Julian goes out wide. He's going to try and cut back underneath or right behind Olivier Hart. Hart comes off the corner through the three parts of Luffield, accelerating on to the old pit straight. And as they rush towards Copse, he is still just in front.
Mustang in front of them, but once again Olivier Hart gives Julian Thomas no option to go up the inside, keeps that line. They're now slightly uphill towards Maggots. It's a fast left and then into the Beckett's sweeps, and it's still Olivier Hart. Julian Thomas, last few laps, has been very, very quick through Beckett's. That seems to be where he has an advantage over Olivier Hart, and that gives him a run then down the Hanger Straight.
Oh, and Olivier's catching the Mustang, just got by the fastback in the right place, the GC350. But you're right, Julian Thomas again closes, and again he's challenging here. He likes the wide line around Stowe. High, wide and handsome. Doesn't have the run there on Olivier Hart to quite make that work, so looks back, but this will be the wrong side exiting the Vale. He's not going to be able to complete the overlap there. Does he get the inside coming into Club Corner? No, again, the big cars are just covering too much ground too quickly, but look at the hands of Olivier Hart. Massive handfuls of opposite lock being applied, even as he's accelerating off the turn. Up 3 minutes to go.
Hamilton Straight, well, we've got probably a couple of more laps then of this, and up to Abbey and Farm. Once again coming up to that heavy braking for Village. The door didn't need to be shut this time, so no. Julian not distracted by that. He's turned in slightly tighter into Village. That means I think he's going to go and try and come back on the inside of Olivier Hart at Loop, but once again Hart holds the inside line, doesn't give him the option.
He's trying to force Olivier to brake later by showing his nose, and Olivier's just not going for it. But again, it does look like Hart doesn't quite have the traction. Julian Thomas looking around the outside. This time there's a Volvo on the outside line, and again Olivier Hart holds the inside. Julian Thomas might be running out of options here. Olivier Hart seems to have blunted his attack and seems to understand where he's likely to be vulnerable. And again, Julian Thomas, 4 square through Luffield. Is there a chance into Copse? What's in front of them? Let's take a look down the straight. It's open and wide. Julian could get a move going down out of Copse through Maggots and into the Beckett's S's. This might be his chance. It's the penultimate lap. Next time they get to the line, they will start the last lap of the race. God, this is so close. There are other cars in this race, but this is what it's all about. The finale of the 2024 Silverstone Festival. It's going to be an epic 2-man race all the way to the line.
Out of the middle element of Beckett's, once again onto the Hanger Straight. This is where Julian Thomas does seem to have a little advantage, and he'll come up. He's got a good slipstream, pulls to the outside nice and early, shows what he's going to do, doesn't want any incident, and he's almost able to turn in.
Whoa.
But once again, Olivier Hart's got the line.
Has Olivier overcooked it? He has overcooked it. Julian Thomas might squeeze up the inside. And Julian wasn't quite as quick off the Beckett's S's. He wasn't quite close enough to Olivier Hart. Olivier was almost 4 wheels on the dirt on the inside of each corner, just trying to shorten the line, and it managed to work. Last lap, they go either side. No, they both go the same side of the TVR. Here we go, last lap. 1 to go, 30 seconds on the clock. This is it, all or nothing now for Julian Thomas. He will still play fair, and so too will Olivier Hart. What an epic battle we've been treated to, and still no idea which one of them's going to win it. Big handful of opposite from Olivier Hart. Julian Thomas still under control, but still trying to find a way through.
He's got alongside now on the exit, but I think Olivier's far enough ahead to take the line through Aintree. But Julian's going quicker, isn't he? He's come out of the loop a little bit more quickly, so it'll be another challenge. Look at this. Olivier Hart knows he's under pressure. He's holding the inside line. Julian's got the inside for the braking for Brooklands, but just not able to get the nose in so that Hart can't turn in.
No, and he knew that if he left it later, he would just run wide, scrub wide, and hit Olivier Hart. And I think Julian Thomas will be more happy to finish second after an epic and clean dice with this youngster than he would be to nerf him out of the way accidentally. And it's certainly not going to happen deliberately. Julian Thomas, far too experienced and clean a racer. Is he going to go around the outside into Copse Corner? No, he can't get the overlap there either. These cars are so evenly matched.
And now Julian will be concentrating on doing the best run through Beckett's he can, because his best chance now is to try and come alongside on the Hanger Straight, and the speed down the Hanger Straight really starts being built here through the Beckett's S's, and he'll be looking for an excellent run through the last element. That is a good run. He's close in. He's probably a length behind, isn't he? So he'll be getting a good slipstream onto the Hanger Straight now. Here we go.
What is the traffic ahead going to do? He's going to have to go inside here. He's going to try two wheels on the grass. Olivier moves over to shut the door. Looking over him, he sort of almost nodded there at Julian Thomas. Sorry about that, but it was a clean enough move. Thomas has got two more corners to try and win this race. Olivier Hart might yet cling on to this. Julian Thomas with the fastest race lap, but that was before he caught Olivier Hart. They're not going to catch traffic. The checkered flag is out to finish the 2024 Silverstone Festival. It is victory for Olivier Hart by 0.3 of a second from Julian Thomas after an epic 20-minute dice. Mano a mano, what a race that was. And in third place comes Harry Barton in his TVR. Didn't see much of him in the second half of the race. You can forgive us for not taking our eyes away from Olivier Hart and Julian Thomas. That was epic, and I'm sure Harry Barton will be very happy with his result as well. But oh boy, there's going to be some ebullience. And look at that, Dan Eagling, fourth place ahead of John Spears in the TVR. And then the Dodds should be next around the corner. And that will be the lead E-Type. It is some way back. That's not them either. Here we go. That's the Pearson car, but just ahead, 21 comes across the line there. So Graham and James Dodd take the honours of being the top E-Type. But, oh, breathless stuff. Absolutely fantastic. Well, hands out to the cockpit, saluting the crowd. I hope they're getting a very warm reception from everybody in the grandstands and along the side of the track, and I'm sure they are, because no matter which dog you had in the fight, it was an absolutely epic fight. What a race. Two drivers being absolutely as close and as clean as you like in really well-matched cars. Julian Thomas set the fastest race lap, catching Olivier Hart. Just got his nose in front a couple of times, got alongside a whole host more, but somehow Olivier managed to cling on. Well, we've seen him attack, we've seen him race away in front, and this is Olivier Hart in real close quarters company. And I think he's been just as impressive in that respect, in his respect for the other driver and their ability to race on the ragged edge and still no contact whatsoever. Now, is that battle of the weekend?
Definitely.
I think so.
That was.
I think so.
I didn't think we'd be able to beat some of the earlier races, but that was tremendous, and capped really by the fact that it was so clean and well mannered, if you like. No contact, yet they were both on the very edge of adhesion.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely epic stuff. What a finale. What a finale. And again, apologies to everybody else in our 53-car grid who were probably having an epic race themselves as well. But you just can't tear your eyes off this. Harry Barton comes in third. I'm not sure how much of that he saw. He was only 8 seconds behind at the end, but there's his dad. There's David Hart offering his congratulations to Olivier. Olivier goes round because the very first thing he wants to do is exactly the same thing that his rival wants to do, Julian Thomas. Congratulate each other. That's what you come racing for. Well, I don't know how we're going to beat that. Luckily, we don't have to try. That's the final race of the weekend and our final happy interviews. Let's get down to Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, thanks very much, Martin. As you can see, there's a lot of jubilation going on here right now. I'm going to try and get Olivier, who's being hugged and kissed by everybody around here. I'll avoid doing that just, you know, for other reasons. But Olivier, if you take your helmet off and get your thoughts, because what a battle that was. That went on and on and on.
Yes, I saw 50 minutes and I thought, how am I going to do this? But I drove a lot of time with Thomas, and I know he's a fair driver. So I thought maybe try and race him, and that's what I did. And he was fair and square. Sometimes missed our brakings a bit, but we kept each other right in our eyes and didn't make any mistake. I think maybe one scratch, that's it. So one of my best races I did in classic car racing. So I'm very happy and proud to be on the top step.
It required a lot of defensive driving as well. Your positioning was fantastic. It just seemed to be every question he had, there was an answer.
Yeah, it's true. I know the engine of Thomas, and it's quick, and it has a lot of horsepower, but I calculated myself in my head where he could overtake me, and then I should position my car at the right spot. And always look, you have one eye in the mirror to have a look where he's at, because he can just go on the inside and then it's probably over. So very happy.
Well done, it was a fantastic battle. Let's see if we can find Julian. Julian's just over here. Let's get a quick word with Julian. I mean, to round out the Silverstone Festival on-track action, that was epic.
Incredible, I've got no words. That's the most fun I've ever had.
We need some more words, because I tell you what, we were watching and watching and watching, thinking we might see an overtake here.
I was trying, I got alongside him, but he's so good. He just put his car exactly where he needed. He made a couple of mistakes, but he didn't lose too much time, and I got alongside him. I saw him, he was going to turn in, so I just lifted. It was just gentleman driving, but inch to inch, it was brilliant.
I can tell you're emotional, and we are too. We thought it was a fantastic race. We're going to hand back to Martin right now, but we have loved every single moment. What a way to end the on-track action. Thank you very much for being a part of it.
The best fun I've ever had. Well, there you go. And if that doesn't sum up the final race battle, then nothing does. Olivier Hart by a whisker from Julian Thomas. Harry Barton taking third. Dan Eagling fourth in the Ginetta D4R ahead of the Nigel Greensill, John Spears TVR and the Dodd family E-Type. They were the top E-Type in the field. And again, apologies to everybody else in all the close races or up and down the order, and there were some very close finishes. The Balfour Ashton car just ahead of the Lynn family by 34 hundredths of a second, 65 hundredths of a second rather. Some very close battles, but you just couldn't take your eyes off those at the front. Well, a string of disappointing lack of reliability results for some of the Lotus Elans, but some of them made it through. And there you go, those are the rest of our finishers here in this epic 53 car field, the International Trophy for classic GT cars. Victory